Here to break down the week that was is Scott Bauer from the Associated Press once again. Thanks as always, Scott.
You bet.
All right, let's talk about the budget. The Joint Finance Committee, they're trying to write through their budget here, and one of the big items was the capital budget for some big projects coming up. Now, they had a big number, $2.4 billion, I believe is the number Republicans came up with, but that's a far cry from what the governor wanted, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a pretty routine pattern we've seen here where the governor asked for a lot more money than the committee is going to give him for capital projects. He did the same thing in 2019 and 2021. Both times, Republicans scaled it back. He had asked for $3.8 billion. They pushed it back to close to $2.4, which is more than it had been on the two previous budgets, but obviously less than what Governor Evers had asked for.
There were a couple of maybe important projects to some people that weren't included in that capital budget for the Republicans. UW System President Jay Rothman kind of sounded off on this because there's one or two big projects that he didn't get covered.
Right. So the biggest item that wasn't included was a new engineering building at UW-Madison. That was the top priority for not only Madison, but the whole entire UW system. They've raised over $100 million in private money for this project, and they were asking the state for a little less than $200 million, essentially as a match, and they didn't get anything. And so there were a lot of accusations from Democrats on the committee that this was a political retribution move, that Republicans are angry at UW, they don't like Madison because it's a Democratic stronghold. All of these things were the claims that were made. Republicans said, hey, look, we couldn't afford what the governor wanted. We had to make some tough choices, and we just happened to take the number one priority for UW off the list.
It wasn't just about capital budget, obviously. There were some other items. Broadband internet was another thing. The governor wanted a lot of state money. Republicans have another plan, I guess, for expanding broadband internet access.
Right. Republicans talk a lot about how they've allocated a bunch of money over the years that hasn't been used yet, and they say they didn't want to put any more money into that right now, and you have this untapped amount that's still available. So that's definitely an issue where there's some difference there, and the governor is highlighting the fact that Republicans are putting no new money in for broadband. And we also had them take up some tourism money and put some new money in there for Milwaukee ahead of the Republican National Convention next summer. Gave the state a new fund for tourism, $20 million boost. And then the one that all the headlines got written about was $2 million to Green Bay to help with the NFL draft in 2025.
So we're at the point now where it should be pretty soon, right, where the budget writing committee wraps up their work. I know they wanted to be mid-June. How does the process play out from there?
Well, they're a long ways from being done. Let's put it that way. They're only planning to meet one day next week, this coming week. And if they want to be done by their timeline, they're going to have to really buckle down and get some things done. I think we don't have a deal on shared revenue yet, and that's a huge, huge amount of money that's up in the air that is going to kind of determine how much money is left for all these other big items that they haven't done yet, namely the tax cut, K-12 schools, higher ed, Medicaid. The list goes on and on of the biggest items that are still looming out there. So the middle end of June is going to be a very, very active time in that committee.
Because that's about the time then that once they get done with it, obviously the governor has a say too, right? There's probably going to be some haggling, some maybe line item vetoes that he can do as well.
Right. They always try to write it in such a way that it's very limited as to what he can do with his line item veto. And he's always looking for ways to use that line item veto as best he can, because the only other option for him is to veto the entire budget, which hasn't been done for forever.
I was told by members of that committee they wanted to be wrapped up on the governor's desk by end of June. Does it seem like because of where shared revenue is at, we're actually going to hit that timeline?
They can hit the timeline for sure. They just have to start doing some of these bigger things. They're supposedly going to be some more meetings next week on shared revenue this coming week, so maybe they'll get a deal this week on that, and things will start to fall into place. But the longer that's held out there, the longer we're going to kind of be in this little bit of a limbo with the entire state budget.
There really hasn't been anything at least publicly announced on that development, right?
Right. The last thing publicly we had was Robin Vos saying he was done negotiating on this bill, and he wanted voters in Milwaukee City and County to determine whether they could raise the local sales tax. And you had Devin LeMahieu, the leader of the Senate, saying we want it to go to the local boards to decide. And so that is a big sticking point right now. Everyone seems to still be talking on this. Everyone still remains optimistic. The mayor of Milwaukee just this past week had talked about, again, at the Rotary in Milwaukee, of how critical this is for the city's financing. So everyone wants something to happen, but we just haven't gotten over the finish line on that yet.
I think it's going to be a busy couple weeks here at the Capitol.
I think so.
Yeah, we appreciate your time here, Scott Bauer.
You bet.